All right, guys. I'm here today with Professor Jim Rosenthal from Tenbears Martial Arts from Dayton, Ohio. So Jim, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
anything else you had here.
Yeah, well, first of all, the name Tenbears, if anybody wants to know why Tenbears, I always tell folks the short history is Tenbears was an American Indian war chief. He was a badass. And I just thought when I was competing, I had that name on the back of my gi. And I thought it was just a really cool name and it stuck with me. They kind of called me Tenbears at the old school in the 90s. And I started out, my first martial art was boxing, late 70s, early 80s. And then it wasn't until mid 90s when my nephew turned me on to jiu-jitsu. And at that time, BJJ wasn't quite that popular and it was American jiu-jitsu. And, and that was an eclectic blended system. It had a little bit of everything. It was like an MMA jiu-jitsu. And we had competitions, and I'll get into that in a minute if you'd like. But that was where I first learned it. And then I also in the 90s was introduced to Renzo Gracie and BJJ, who was my first professor.
So it's now really, and just so people know, like Jim and I know each other through social media, and we have the same professor now, right? Marcelo Montero, and kind of the same, but we don't really know each other, right? So this is kind of the first time that you and I get to talk. And even that introduction right there, to me, it sounds like we have a similar background. Like I came from boxing really because that's all there was, right? There was no jiu-jitsu until the mid 90s. And then even when there was jiu-jitsu, like when you watch UFC, it wasn't like you could just go train somewhere.
Right.
For Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like you could go somewhere and do Japanese jiu-jitsu, but you quickly find out that's not what you wanted to do. For example, I did that.
Yeah.
And right away, when I went to Japanese jiu-jitsu, I was like, well, this is not what I was wanting to do. I'm not saying it was not helpful, and I'm not bad mouthing that. It's just not. It's like if I'm signing up for boxing and then I go wrestle or do something, I'm like, well, that's not what I'm here for, So
exactly.
Yes, that's cool. Also, too, I want to mention too. I just noticed this while you're talking. For anybody watching, we are not in the same room. It looks like we have the exact same colors in our room, so maybe we have a lot of stuff in common. Which is,
I'm in another bedroom.
Yeah, so we're not in the same house or anything. But so now that we got that out of the way, so that's interesting. So I also did Golden Gloves. Did you do Golden Gloves? And were you in Ohio then?
They don't even have Golden Gloves here anymore.
Exactly. Same here. Which is funny.
I mean, other stuff has gotten popular, and I'm not sure. I think a lot of the guys, when I was coming up, I think some of those old school pro fighters, they were called club fighters back then. I think they're all dead. I mean, they were old, man, when I was a teenager, and I think the sweet science is a wonderful art, though. It's an amazing workout. It's amazing practice. Very self-defense oriented or attack oriented, and it really complements some of the modern stuff in MMA, and even I think it gives you kind of like that lion heart. When I first started doing ground jiu-jitsu and BJJ and even the American jiu-jitsu, it gave me that fighter's mentality, because it boxing's a tough sport like wrestling, and it enables you to really be competitive and kind of take no prisoners and balls to the wall mentality.
That's a good point. Like I think, and we've had a lot of conversations at my gym. After we're done working out and everybody's sitting on the mat, just kind of BS, and that's kind of one of the things we talk about too. Is because a lot of people ask, really, just so people know too. One of the things we're going to talk about today is the risk or reward versus in competition, right? So that doesn't matter really. I mean, obviously, we're playing jiu-jitsu, but it doesn't matter. All of it's the same as far as competing goes. But since you made that point, that's one of the points I would agree with you on, is that I think sometimes in jiu-jitsu, since you are submitting or tapping out, right, you have a tendency you're kind of giving up whenever you want to, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing, because that way you're not getting your arm broke, you're not getting your leg broke, you're moving on. When boxing, if you did that, you really would get ostracized, right? Obviously, the famous fight with Roberto Duran, or the No Mas fight, all he did is say, hey, I'm done, which we do every day in MMA and jiu-jitsu. In boxing, that fight's legendary just because he stopped, right?
And I think that's a great point, Butch, because back then, I think the boxing mentality was you're either a boxer, tough ass guy that can handle the storm, or you're not. And we kind of looked at those guys like well, Sugar Ray was my favorite fighter back then because that was my same weight class, and he was like a hero idol of mine. And I kind of looked at Roberto, he's a very tough. They used to call him Stone Hands for a reason.
Yeah.
Very tough guy, but I think a large part of the game that a lot of competitors and a lot of fighters, and I think it's in MMA now because it's gotten so mainstream, but it's a mental game. And that was a great example that Roberto had just gave up mentally because he didn't have anything for Sugar in that fight. And Sugar Ray was just like way too fast, way too tricky, way too crafty. And I think he got so frustrated mentally that he just said, no mas, I'm done.
Yeah. And even that's an argument that we probably could have forever, right? Like rather some people will say, well, he had a puncher's chance, right? He could have got his butt kicked for the entire fight and then one punch knock him out, right? Then other people say, look, if you know you're not going to win the fight, you're just taking unnecessary damage that's going to affect you through the rest of your life, rest of your career. Maybe you should, there's two ways of street, especially I know a lot of times now in recent times, even in MMA, trainers have gotten a hard for letting their fighter go, right? They're like, maybe their fighter destroyed, and this is more MMA. And they should, like, why didn't they stop the fight? But then us as fighters, former fighters, we also know the difference, right? Like sometimes, like you want to stay in that fight because you think, man, all it takes is one, especially MMA, one submission, the guy could fall. I can land the right spot, right? Even out, and we've seen MMA, right? Somebody get beat up the whole time, then knock a guy out or submit him.
Right. Yeah, it's happened. That's I think that's why the uneducated viewer likes MMA so much because it's so volatile. It's very unpredictable. And they don't, of course, everybody has favorites that's been around a little while and all that and love certain guys, but we've seen the best guys on the planet get beat. It doesn't seem like that Adesanya right now will get beat in striking anytime soon.
Yeah,
he's like on another level, but it goes back to the individual. His practice of striking is probably since he was very young. He's got like 200 kickboxing matches, I think, something crazy. And so it's kind of like, I always equate that when I'm talking to new people that come in, they're like, oh, I want to be a UFC fighter. I'm like, okay, right. I don't say that, but I just say, all right, well, we can kind of work that for you. But I always use Michael Jordan as an example for deliberate practice and become, at mastery level, you need to just really devote your life to something if you want to go to that level. And like we're talking about sacrificing of maybe relationships, not going out and partying with your buddies, not doing very little but training. And all these guys we see on TV, it's kind of their job now. It's it's a professional level where they've put in years and years of work to get to that place. That's their dream. And a lot of these younger kids, they watch it. Usually after a big fight, I'll get a couple calls and they'll be like, hey, do y'all do that UFC fighting over there? And I'm like, yeah, it's the name of a brand. It's not a particular martial art. We teach all the arts that are in that fight show you're watching. But what you're seeing takes quite a bit of time and effort and sacrifice to get to that level. But we can kind of get you on the path and see where you want to go for there. Usually they do one class and they get done, they're like, oh my God, that was hard.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
I'm like, you're just at the tip of the iceberg now, dude.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny because I think, and that must be probably a universal thing for all of us that own gyms, right? Because I get the same calls, and like you said, 9 times out of 10, those guys that call and say that I want to fight in the UFC, they don't last past a couple of classes. It's very strange.
Yeah.
If I called somebody and said that, I think I would already have it in my mind, I already know what I'd have to do and the dedication involved. I don't understand I don't call somebody and say, I want to play in the NFL and then show up to the NFL one day and then like, well, what was I thinking? I wouldn't know that. Like I'm gonna have to lift weights. I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to get my butt kicked for these giant fast people.
Right.
you know, I don't
And
get it. I don't know why. I guess I do kind of get it because we're men and men are kind of cavemanish, right? We all think in our brain
right,
kill everybody until
right,
the time comes. Like, why did that guy get in a fight? He don't even know how to fight. You know,
right,
very
right.
strange. But so really to keep us on task, so that kind of goes back. If I'm talking about the risk versus reward of competing, whether it's, you know, jujitsu, MMA, boxing, whatever, that kind of goes that. So the risk besides the injury really is kind of what you're just saying, is the time that you're looking to put into it and the time involved. And that's one of the risks. For example, a lot of times now, especially now that I'm older and I have a gym, of course, everybody's like, why don't you compete now? Right. And so it's kind of a complicated question, but one of them is that, because I know that, like, for example, like Marcelo said, hey man, just do some jiu-jitsu tournaments for fun. And I said, well, for me, losing is not fun. So like if I go and I compete and I lose, I'll be really mad. So what I need to do, then I will want to train more, right? Because that's the thing. So that's the risk part, and the training. So what part of my life am I going to take away to train more for this competition? At this stage of my life, I
Right.
don't have that time in my, it's not high priority for me right now, right? Like that's, so the risk for me, meaning that, am I going to take more money away from the family because I'm not at work, or am I going to get injured? I'm not so much worried about the injury. It would be a problem. I'm more worried about just, I don't know what I'm going to give up to do that, you know, is my thing, right? At this point, if that makes sense, right? So at my point at 40, you know, mid 40s, I'm like, hey, you know, look, those days have passed. I did it when I did it. Now's my time to pass on that stuff. And I still compete. Obviously at
Yeah.
the gym, it's a little different. I'm not saying I won't do something at some point, but it's just not high on the priority list. Like somebody said, like, not everybody that, you know, runs or jogs wants to enter a marathon, right? It's kind of the
Right.
same thing. I love jiu-jitsu,
Right.
love boxing, but
Yeah, I think you come to, and that's a great point. I think you come to a place in life where, you know, you get other priorities. You try to balance out things between family, business, and work, and you have the next generation coming through your school, and those are the things you want to pass on to give them. I always try to tell everybody that comes in, and we did a survey when I've gone to a lot of business seminars for the school. Years ago, I went to over a decade ago. I went to Lloyd Irving's some of his business seminars, and some other guys, and we took a survey, and we realized only 8 to 10% of any given school will the athletes want to compete.
that's
And
interesting.
now I know there are other schools like some of the Gracie Baja and some of the, like Marcelo kind of talks about it a lot because he came from a competitor's background.
Yeah.
And I think I always try to, and I came from a competitor background, and I try to share with the tribe that comes through my school. I'm like, I think everyone, whether you want to or not, you should at least try it once to see, to get in touch with your own nervousness, to get in touch with your own fears, to get in touch with the difficulty of prepping for a tournament, and getting yourself out there, you know, and not knowing what's going to happen. There's no guarantees, and you just put the work in to see what it feels like, the emotions that go with it, and then of course the victory feelings that go with victory, and of course the agony of defeat. And
Yeah.
you know, it's all part of the, it's not everything for a martial artist, but it, for some people that are competitive, it's very important, I think, for those guys. And I think for the ones that it's not as important, you should at least give it a shot. Well, we have this one girl that comes in to the school. She only does kickboxing, and she's never sparred. And about a month or two ago, she finally sparred, and has been with us maybe 6 months or 4 to 6 months or something. And also did some at another school prior to us. And she got so scared when she got punched in the face the first time, she actually wept. She cried. It was like, and I didn't know this, but she suffers from some kind of anxiety disorder that gets kicked off by whatever. I don't know in her story if she was abused or whatever. You never know.
No, but
And
definitely amplify it, right? There's nothing that's going to
it would. I can fully understand that. And so we pulled her aside. The coach pulled her aside and said, "Hey, you know, you don't have to do more of this tonight." It's okay. We all get punched in the face. They're supposed to have controlled sparring anyway, and maybe it was a little harder than than the person intended or whatever. And you know how it is in sparring. If you get hit, it's like, okay, I'm going to hit you now,
Yes.
and it's just part of the game. But for those that have whatever's in their story, or those that suffer from some kind of anxiety disorder or whatever, that can be a very big challenge, even in a school, not let alone a competition, because sparring in a school is a form of competition. But we told, and she's going to try it again, and she said, I'm going to face my fears, but if it's something that comes up again, I'll probably not do it. But I just love the training, so we don't want to lose her as a student because of that.
No.
Because I think martial arts can be for everyone. I think it would have saved me a lot of headaches in school when I was coming up. It would have really gave me a lot more confidence and self-esteem as a kid. And I didn't, my parents couldn't afford it, or my dad died when I was young, so it just didn't it wasn't a thing until I found boxing. And but I know that it really does help folks, whether they compete or not. And I still want to try to share with the tribe, hey, just give it a shot. Let's see how it goes for you. Let's see if it's something you want to do. And most importantly, you get to see what it's like, the feelings and emotions that go with it, the excitement and all the fears you got to face. Because I really believe that, these folks that compete or try difficult sparring in classes, I really believe it helps them. I think martial arts, BJJ, kickboxing, and so on, I think it mirrors real life. I think that if you can push through difficulties and hardships in sparring in the school and/or competition, I think your brain will get wired as such when you go through struggles in relationships, struggles in finances, struggles on a job, a boss that's an asshole, whatever. I think it'll teach you, oh yeah, when I sparred, this stuff is not as hard as my sparring. Yeah. This stuff is not as hard as getting armbarred in a tournament in front of all my peers. Mm-hmm. I can get through this. And so I think I encourage them that this will really help you in life. This kind of mirrors real life. So just keep pushing yourself through these difficulties, and it will help you outside of the gym. It'll help you outside of competition when you come into struggles of life. And so that's kind of my motto with them.
That's a good point too. And while you're saying that it made me think of a lot of the things that people complain about today's youth, really, whether it's warranted or not, but the kind of thing where everybody gets a trophy now, right? A participation trophy, right? So one could argue, growing up like we did, that wasn't a thing. We knew what it was like to win. We knew what it was like to lose. We also had like I played football when I was young, and I had coaches grab me by the face and ass and jerk me around and cuss me out in front of my family and like it was different, right? And then you learned, okay, like I'm gonna either toughen up and go back. Like I dealt with it right there and then. Like if a coach grabbed me by the face mask, ripped me around, cussed me out, I'd either like went and sat on the bench and never played again, and I wouldn't, because he's like, fine, you don't play, you don't play, just don't even talk, right? And then I had to get up off my butt and say, no, I want to play, coach. And I'd have to work through this. And I feel like, and now when I have those hard things, I've had something to kind of to look back on that helped me through life. So do you think that maybe this is more important, maybe in a way, for today's youth, because there is a winner and loser in jiu-jitsu? We don't say, well, you guys both won, because nobody, you got choked.
No, I take that saying that the late Carlson Gracie shared with all of us. He said in jiu-jitsu, there is no losing. You either win or you learn. And I tell them, I'm like, look, a competition or the sparring in class today is going to give you a snapshot of where you are in your game right now. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you may lose as far as not getting points, or you may get armbarred in class 5 times or choked 6 times or whatever. But the point is what did you learn about how you can escape? What did you learn about how you could get out of this? What did you learn about your cardio is weak right now and it needs improvement because you're still smoking or whatever? Yeah. And so I make those points out to all the students, to whether they're newer or been around a little while. I make those points out. I take his teaching from whether you win and you learn from jiu-jitsu. I take that and put it into life like you do. We learn through our mistakes. There's really no failures because I find out what doesn't work. I mean, look at Edison. I'm a studier of Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. And uh, and Edison, it took him 9,000 times to get the incandescent light bulb to work. Who
We
in
could,
the F,
yeah,
who,
we could get
who
the
in the
filter,
hell
right?
who in the hell could have that kind of patience, persistence, and perseverance in
Yeah,
today's instant gratification society that the kids are coming up in with the smartphones? They're used to everything right now, right now. And we don't live in that. Real life is not instantly gratifying ever. If it is instantly gratifying, it's not anything that's worthwhile. It's just something that's a quick thrill for a minute and then you move on. But you know, the points of jujitsu, man, it's an evolving art that takes time. And you know, if you go to another school to get outside of your comfort zone, to train with somebody else, you find out, man, my game, you know, it needs improving. I've got to do some work here. My cardio's weak, and
yeah,
you know, and so I'm still of that old school. You know, you just work, you get in the trenches, and you just work hard, and it pays off eventually. And there may be a lot of heartache and headache and setbacks along the way, but it's part of the deal with anything that's substantial. Like when you get a degree or you get certificates in things in life, or you have to go through school, you have to go to a job to learn a new skill, you have to learn how to build a house, whatever. Nothing is instantly happening here. You have to go through the process and go through the learning curve, go through the setbacks, the disappointments, the failures, and so on. And you keep moving forward. The winners are the ones that stick with something and go with it. I love this teaching I saw. I think it was from Tim Creeder or somebody online. And he said, no parent was ever happy about their child wanting to quit martial arts. They realized later that they would be quit at many other things.
yeah,
And I would love for students to stay and get a black belt, but the truth is maybe 3% or less
yeah.
get black belts. And it's sad. You know, I have this saying up on my wall. I'll send it to you. It came from Lloyd Irving, has it hanging in his school, and it's called Traits of a 3%er. And it's all these positive traits that this ratio in society is. You have 3%ers, the hustlers, the managers, the go-getters, the people that don't mind grinding it out and doing the extra steps in life to achieve and acquire some degree of success. And then you have the 97%ers, what most people are: quitters, complainers, whiners, bitchers, negativity folks. And then I look at so many different areas. When I was working in the medical world, you work in the medical field,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when I was working in the medical field, we had such a turnover in employees. And I'm like, well, these are 97%ers. They think the grass is greener somewhere else. And you've got the people, the stick and stayers. And I understand people, you know, find better jobs and all that. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
But it was like that ratio was like at the job as well as it is in the school and other areas of life. Probably a lot of people go to college and probably 97% of the folks don't finish. And
Yeah.
you got this group that finishes. And so I look at that in competitions at the highest level in BJJ, you got this 3% or less group of guys that are killers, you know,
For sure.
Cyborgs, Leander Lowe, you got all these, you know, Keenan Cornelius back a few years ago, all those guys, they're just monsters, but they have put in the damn effort and the work to get there. They're the no matter what guys, no matter whether it rains, it's snowing, my mom and dad got a divorce, you know, my house burnt down, I show up at class.
Well,
And,
you could say, I mean, they're reaping the reward, you know, we're talking about risk reward, but they put in all that effort that nobody sees, right? They just see what they're doing now.
yeah.
You know, when you're speaking of Lloyd Irvin, and the same thing, I know people give him a hard time now, but I probably talked to him about the same time that you were, like 90s or 2000s. And I remember like Ryan Hall has blue belts, and even
Oh man.
Brandon Vera, and because we stayed in touch, and I had some guys, we went and trained with them. Like I said, when Ryan Hall was a blue belt, and
Right.
I think Brandon Vera was getting ready for Tim Sylvia fight, so that's why we.
I remember that.
Yeah, he needed some tall people, and so we came up with that. But the point there too is like besides, he is good at marketing, and I think that's what some people give him a hard time.
Well, that's his specialty.
But I think what you're saying there is a valid point. What he said, and I would love to see it. What he's talking about, the 3%ers, because we all need that motivation. Like if that's listed out too, and that might motivate people to stick with things longer if they know, like, hey, yeah, this is hard. But the reward after you make it through all this stuff is going to be exponential, and it's going to change your life in other areas, right?
No question. No question. I think it builds like risk rewards for competition, or scholastics in school, or going to the next level in relationships or whatever. I think that it builds like a mental muscle that you toughen and hone, that like people from football backgrounds like you and people from boxing backgrounds like us, they understand that challenge and the difficulty of pushing through your own personal. I'm reading Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I'm reading that, and the guys, he had to go through SEAL training 3 times. They said, this is your last time you're going to get to go through.
He still had broken legs, right? When he made it through, he still had broken legs.
Yeah, broken legs. And he's one of those guys that's pushed through self-imposed or real barriers like shin splints like he had, or what have you. And Navy SEALs isn't for everybody, but it's definitely for the 3%ers of hardcore training athletes that push themselves through difficult barriers. And it's the same, I think, the same ratio, the same mindset is true for BJJ, MMA, boxing, football, wrestling, and these other competitive sports. It's just and it goes back to us talking about, combat sports, and sports in general is like a mindset. It's like a huge percentage of it is a mental fitness game. Just as you get your body ready, you have to get your mind ready and train your mind for these things.
Well, all of it too. And that's what when you mentioned all sports, I was just thinking of my kids, they play soccer and basketball right now, but
tough sports.
But it's like, I think about this sometimes when I'm in the crowd and people are giving their kids a hard time. And I've given my kids a hard time, and
sure,
I'm just trying to figure out how to coach them as a parent. Right. But ultimately, I think people forget what that sport is for. Right. So I remember, like, for example, if my son comes and says, and they don't say this for anybody that's watching this, but if they do come and say, hey, the coach doesn't like me, that's why I'm not playing. Right.
Right.
I would say, oh, well, so what are you going to do about it? So when you get in the game, I need you to do so good they can't deny putting you in. If you don't do that good, then it is what it is. You have a problem. You need to find a solution to overcome it. The solution's not getting on another team or switching schools, or this, like, if that's the true problem that the coach doesn't like or doesn't recognize you, he has his favorites. Those things happen in life, just like we talked about earlier. And that's, sports helps get you ready for life, right? Because it's going to happen. You don't get a promotion. You don't get these things. You kind of like the Jocko Good video. I'm sure you listened to it, right? Where they said, you didn't get this. Well, good. You didn't get this. Well, good. This gives me an opportunity to get better. It gives me an opportunity to relock, reload, and recalibrate and be victorious, right? It's kind of
exactly
that's what this is for.
Yeah. And I think those are great comments that you made to your child. A lot of parents are trying to coach from the sideline entirely. And I want to find out what the saying is. A friend of mine in her school has something about parents not coaching from the sidelines when they spar.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. It's like, we already have coaches that know what they're doing. We're experts at what we do. Yes. We don't need parents helping us coach. And I mean, the school's a little different than sidelines in football or soccer or basketball, because everybody's yelling there. It's like pandemonium, everybody's screaming stuff.
That's a great, I want you to finish that, but that's a great point. In jiu-jitsu, it's important because the one part I think that's one-on-one in jiu-jitsu or wrestling or even boxing, right? But if you're yelling, get him, son, get him, how do you think that other parent feels, or the other kid, right?
Right.
It's not, I know that you're not meaning bad by it, but you're spreading this energy that could go the wrong way, right? It's more
exactly. It could cause over aggressiveness, or and we try to, train the kids to go at a level where they go where they're at their level and not above their level or below their level, but just go to work hard, but make it difficult to train, but not like you can't beat your co-students up real bad. I mean, they're not going to learn anything if they're newer, number one. Number two, you just doing 10 arm bars and 20 chokes on a kid, what did you learn?
Yeah, it's a whole different thing, huh?
It is.
Yeah, so these are, I mean, this is perfect because I think, I mean, we've stayed focused. I was gonna say we've been all over the place, but we haven't, because it's all been on really competition. But even if it's not competition, it's just what you learn out of that. Whether you're adult or a kid, you can learn everything. And earlier when you were talking about too, like when you were talking about your female student that was a little bit nervous in sparring, and like I get it too, man. Sometimes one thing about boxing or kickboxing is just exactly what you said, is somebody gets hit hard, somebody gonna hit somebody else hard. It's the one sport that's not like jiu-jitsu. Is like you can go 100%, you'll be beating me, but I'm not really getting hurt. So I'm not like, oh, this guy's just roughing me, he's ragdolling me up. Typically doesn't happen in boxing, kickboxing. I mean, people get noses, they don't want to come back. It's right. It can be demoralizing. But I also think so. That's not for everybody, for sure, right? Because if you don't have the right sparring partners, you're not at the right, like somebody controlling that environment. But however, I think some people need to remind themselves, like whether you're going to compete or not, like why did you start martial arts? Why did you start boxing? Did you start it to defend yourself? Because if you started to defend yourself, then you need to get used to maybe going to somebody's a little wild or somebody's a little, and get yourself used to being in that weird position at least a few times, right? Because it's different in practice when everything's controlled and your heart's not racing and your anxiety is not kicking in. But when all that's happening, a lot of us, like our skills get quite diminished because we don't take as many risks, right? Yes. And then you got to deal with that. So all of a sudden now I look like a superstar on the mats. Now that it's real, now maybe I'm only showing maybe 25% of my skill because I'm so like afraid to do something. Yeah. So I think if you also in that situation, maybe you should think, maybe I should do something here or there just to make sure that I'm good, right? It doesn't have to do with, maybe you don't. I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And what I've been trying to do lately is separate guys that want to compete, and I know people that can push them. So I've been trying to get other folks that can push them in rounds, rounds and stuff. And then I'm just going to talk to a couple of the guys that helped me coach. I was thinking of having a separate competition class. It's just, it's different than a regular martial arts class, which kind of is fit. Go back to Lloyd for a minute. He used to have, he came from a football background too. And he used to have competition tryouts for certain weight classes. Like there's only 2 positions for this. And so, you guys got to hustle. And he had a big enough school with enough bodies that, he can do that. But not all, my school is kind of small. And, but I think it's a good idea. And I understand the mindset because competition training is different than regular classes. So it is. And I think, in speaking with Tom DeBlas too, he talks about it a lot too. He's been to our gym a couple times, but he said, like, I treat my people that compete a lot different, right? Like if they get hurt or if they want to drink a water, I tell them tough luck. They've got to earn it. They could be bleeding on the mat. I tell them to get back up. And he's like, no, but my regular people, if they get hurt or something, I'll be over there comforting them and making sure that's they're okay. Good. Yeah, that's good that he distinguishes the differences. But I think it's important because I didn't have that. I came from a competition background before I realized there were different levels before I met Lloyd Irving. Man, I just thought when someone came into the school, I thought it would be cool as hell if I could kick them in the head, and they would like that. And not everybody wants to be kicked in the head. No, yeah. And so I learned that the hard way, and I wasn't able to reach as many people because I was trying to push my agenda onto others, and not everybody is like me. Not everybody is has the mindset that Jim has, and so I learned that some people want to be maybe around the competitors, but they don't want to go as hard as the competitors. They want to just
get a workout in, go to support them in competitions. And that's good. They got to go to work and their face has to look normal and they don't want to be all broken down at their job. And so I understood that after listening to other people that had experienced that. One guy was a guy down in Florida who learned from Lloyd too in the early days, Marcus Avalon. I don't know if you know FFA.
His brother actually lived in Beckley, which David. Which
wow.
Nobody knew.
Yeah, I know David.
Yeah, right before he, because he did the Kimura trap system, correct? David did.
Yeah.
Right before he was getting ready to move to Florida back, I guess he was here for work. He said, "Hey man, do you want me to do a seminar?" And it didn't work out just because the timing was bad. But he's like, "I've lived here for 3 years, like literally like an hour from him." I'm like, "What? Like, how did I?"
Yeah.
Like, it was very strange. But
wow.
now,
I had a lot of respect for him. I think he beat a Gracie or two in no gi in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, man, there's a lot to risk and rewards from a competitive standpoint as well, not only in martial arts and training, but in life. You compete in jobs to get them sometimes, or to even get hired. There's a lot of competition that involves risk and rewards in life, and I always go back to martial arts mimic in real life. I mean, it is a slice of life, but it also can mirror what we do outside the school and outside the gym, depending on what you want to do, what your goals are.
Yeah.
And so I kind of put that to the students and the new folks coming through. I think it's important.
Yeah, you made a good point too. And I don't. Maybe we can finish with this too. Is I think is kind of one. There are different people, right? Like I said, like rather we're saying some people should compete for fun every now and then or do this or that, but there's also a group of people that is their life. They compete. I knew some guys that competed literally like every Saturday, every Sunday, like
That's their goal.
Yeah,
that's their goal.
And they really, I don't know how they are now that they're older in life, but they just did not respect people that didn't do that, right?
Yeah, because they're trying to push their agenda onto others. And I learned that I learned that from Marcus Avalon first when he spoke at Lloyd's event. I learned that, and I'm like, that's what I tried to do when I was a competitor and people came into the school. I'm like, you'll want to get kicked in the head and armbarred really quickly here, maybe in your first class or first few minutes. And it's like, no, I don't want that. I want to maybe learn how that works, but I don't want to actually have that happen to me. And that's why a lot of people would not sign up or stay, because I was trying to push my agenda, which was very narrow vision, a competitor mindset, onto somebody that doesn't have that mindset. Their mindset is apples and oranges. It's completely different. And it took me a while to open my mind to that.
It's the same here. And that's why it's a little bit ironic, because I don't compete as much now. I think, people don't know, like I said, I boxed and kickboxed. I've done everything. And even in jiu-jitsu, like really before it got popular, I did all this stuff like a ton, especially the fighting, the boxing, kickboxing. I mean, it sounds like I had the same experience as you. Like when I went to the gym, I'm trying to learn, I thought they were judging me on if I just survived, right? Because I would go and I'd literally get my head knocked in, and no joke. I mean, I was going with some world champion kickboxers, boxers. I actually Pride. I mean, I literally just met these guys. I've never done nothing, and I mean, they just throttled me, but I would keep showing up. I thought that's what they wanted, and they did. At the time, it was a little bit different than what it is now. But so that's how I trained later. Essentially, when I started a gym, it was a fight club, right? It literally was. It's like, interview.
That sounds exactly like my American Jiu Jitsu Academy.
Yeah.
I got a short story I could end with if you want to hear it.
For sure.
This was a guy named Wes Gasaway. Wes was a MMA fighter.
Is he from Iowa?
What's that?
Is he from Iowa? I know him.
Actually, his brother Brian fought in the UFC early days. Okay. They were from Springfield, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes from here. They trained at my old American Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and Brian got a fight locked. He went over in Pancrase, if you remember that, and fought in Japan a lot.
That's where I know. So collect all the Pancrase tapes, all, you know what I mean, back in VHS
Yeah.
days.
So Wes got a fight scheduled with Frank Shamrock, who was the champion. Now Frank was knocking out everybody at the time with palm strikes and finishing them, choking them, whatever. So we're like, and Wes was just a tough ass guy. I was newer, just a few months in. I had my boxing background, but just a few months in, and we were just feeding him bodies to get ready for this fight. So I'm fighting with him. He's got wrestler's shoes on.
Yeah,
I'm going pretty good with the hands with him. And all of a sudden he kicks me in the head with wrestler shoes on, bam, and just knocked me down literally. And I'm like, oh, that was the coolest shit ever. And
nobody else can say that.
And so, see, I came from that kill or be killed mentality, but like I came from a boxing background and that's all I knew. I didn't know that everybody did not want that. Everybody did not want that type of warfare in their exercise and training. They wanted to maybe be around it, but watch it, but they didn't want to participate and actually get their ass beat consistently, you know, whether you were helping somebody prepare for a fight or that was just the training mentality. And that's what I came from. And it sounds like you too. And
well, yeah, it did. And I think, and that's what we were joking earlier, but it's, I mean, it literally does sound like we came from like almost everything's exactly the same, our stories. And we learned the same thing. And I think that's now, if I look at my journey now, that's what I feel like it is to help the younger people and help people. And in this conversation is one of them saying that, hey, not everybody don't push your agenda on other people is what we were saying earlier, even off this podcast when we're talking, we were just talking about religion and politics, right? You shouldn't push your agenda on anybody, period, because everybody's different. And then what you do is you pigeonhole yourself, rather you might want to be a fight gym and that's okay. So then you can push that because anybody that comes in, you're going to be a fight gym, right? But at this point in my life, I think my goal now is to give back which was given to me. The best way that I can do that is to make it for everybody, and to make it for everybody, I've got to teach people differently and do
exactly. I think I'll just add to that in closing. What my goal is now is very similar to yours. It's to be able to, like, martial arts really helps children for sure. And I saw you have a decent sized youth or kids class. And I made a comment, I think one day when I saw them, you know, like 15, 20 of them stretching or something toward the end or beginning of class. And I was like, we have a chance here to make an impact on a child's life that could last him for the rest of his life, being a coach and being able to show them the arts as they are, not necessarily just for competition, risk, and reward, but the arts as they are in general that can help you and mirror real life. And that's kind of like where I'm at now with it. I can't compete anymore. I'm too damn old and broken down. I may do something in the IBJJF. They got masters, whatever, masters 10 I'm in now. I'm 63. So, but the thing is like, I want to be able to make an impact on a child's life and or an adult's life that they'll remember me by, and it will help them and outside the school at some point, realizing, you know, the principles that we share with them, and whether they risk reward, just coming in and training some hard training sessions and realize they took a risk in doing that and they got through it, and they're stronger and better mentally because of it.
Yeah. Well, it's true, right? Whether they compete or not, I don't want to get too locked up in that, but how many people, I'm sure in your lifetime through owning a gym, have people just wrote you that maybe even, you know, not to be me, but let's say you kind of forgot about them, right? And then 10 years later, they tell you how much they changed, you changed their life. And maybe they like weren't your star student, but it maybe they got in better shape. It helped them get a better relationship, do better job. They just some things.
No question.
Maybe not, you know, come to the gym, but they're a different person now, you know?
No question. I think I'm friends with a basketball coach when I was in high school. His name was Coach Sumlin, and this guy got me in the best shape of my life as a teen. I wasn't a starter on that team because we won the city. We had monsters in the starting positions, but I did play, and he really helped me out with a mindset that a coach offered me. He was tough. like your coach grabbing the helmet and shaking, because he came from a very competitive background. He really worked us hard, and he stuck with me. And we're friends on Facebook now. Shit, he's in his late 80s, I think. And we interact, and I let him know how much he helped me as a young child, later in life, and how it helped me push through difficulties. And I'll never forget that. And I have had students thank me and get in touch with me later that weren't maybe star students, but they were just good students that showed up consistently for a while, and then they thanked me for all the awesomeness that we provided. And I think we get a chance to have a great impact on folks' lives, whether it be for a season or they do end up getting their black belt.
Yeah.
I think it's a blessing that I'm put in this position. I think this is my calling. This is what I'm passionate about still. And I think this will be what I can do until I'm like Helio, just so broke down I can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
But he's still rolling when he was 96. I trained with him when he was 96. Didn't roll with me, but he rolled with some people that he felt safe with, which was crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
94, I think he was, or maybe not 96, but 94. Yeah, it's crazy.
Really, still, even in your 80s, maybe
Yeah.
90s,
Yeah.
that's a God gift.
Yeah.
But this has been a good talk, and I really appreciate the time. Let me know when you get your filter guy to go through it, and I'd be happy to. I'll help you spread it out there. And
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think you ended on a beautiful thing. I mean, I think it's important if anybody's going to come and train with you, that they know where your heart's at. I think that's important. A lot of people don't. They know you have a gym, and that's all they know. So they don't know
Right.
you. And I think it's important, the things that you said. I think if anybody listens to this that maybe is thinking about going to your gym now, hopefully they'll be like, man, this guy's heart's in the right place, and maybe this is a place that I would like to be part of a family.
Yeah,
Sounds
and
like
I think it's super important. I'm going to add to that. I think it's super important that people that don't that a lot of folks see UFC or BJJ competition and think, oh my God, these guys are awesome. They're monsters. I think it's important for us to get word out into the community of not necessarily martial artists, but to let them know martial arts is for everyone. We have a place for you. We have different levels of training, and you don't have to compete like these guys you see on TV or the BJJ guys, but you can learn these arts, and they will help you in real life. They will help you, God forbid you ever need it for self-defense. And we got your back at that level, and just come on in and give us a try.
Well, that's awesome. Well, again, on that note, there's another beautiful thing. Where can people find you on social media, and where is your gym located?
That's great. We're in Dayton, Ohio. You can find us at tenbearsmma.com. Don't get confused by the MMA. That's just different types of arts we teach. And you can find us on Instagram at Tenbears MMA. You can find us on Facebook at Tenbears Martial Arts Academy. You can find me personally anywhere at Jim Rosenthal or Professor Jim Rosenthal. And we have some real short trial offers that are 100% satisfaction guaranteed. You can come in and just give it a test run. If there's something you don't like, we'll give you your money back. And we just want to know what was wrong so we can fix it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, man. Well, it was a pleasure, man. This is awesome. I'm glad that after all these years, we finally sat down and talked, and we'll do it again.
It's been good to get to know you a little more, and then I'd be happy to go over more of these topics we have. That anytime, just let me know. This is a good day for me. Sundays are my slowest day of the week, and let me know, man.
All right, man. Well, we'll be back, and you and the family have a great day. I'm gonna go ahead and end this here, but man, it was a pleasure, and have a great day, man.
I'll see you soon, Butch. Thanks.